Indie housing market. Get the latest insights right here.
Welcome back to Indie Housing Market. I'm Kyle.morris with Morris Property Group and FC Tucker.
I'm Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group and FC Tucker. And we have a wonderful guest today, Jay Rose. And we are so excited to have you here. And the reason I wanted to have Jay here is he is a wealth of the knowledge to keep you, as he always says, out of real estate jail. I actually went to his school to get started back in 2008. That's how I met him, and then he was working with Keller Williams when I was there, and I'm just telling you, we are going to pick his brain today because he'll have the answer that sometimes we
Find out
didn't
what
know
all we're
we
doing.
didn't know.
Yeah, doing wrong. As we just were finding out. Jay Rose, that's a good R&B singer name. That'd be really good.
Yes, that would be great.
So, I don't know, why don't you tell us a little bit, I'm curious first and foremost about what made you decide to start the school? Because obviously you like to teach. That's a certain type of personality, right? Mm-hmm. That likes to do that. I like to teach as well, right? You like to see people learn. You like to be able to give back, all these other things. But there also has to be a need in the marketplace, I feel like, to run it as a business and all this other stuff. So I'm just curious, when you did start it and what it started out of, because you also sold real estate. You've kind of taken
Correct.
a step back from that, you said. But
Correct.
So how did all of that start?
Well, I was teaching for another school.
Okay. That we will not say.
That we will not say. And at one point, going into the next year, I asked, hey, can I teach some more classes? Mm-hmm. No. Will you let me and my business partner run some classes on our own? No. Will you pay me more? No. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
And I
That's
started
how it
my
started.
own school.
Yeah.
And that's been a little more than 6 years ago.
How long were you in real estate before you started even teaching classes?
Oh, my goodness. I started in 91.
Okay.
And I started teaching probably about 2000.
2000?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you just, when you taught me, I don't know where you were, but I just remember, and I had my daughter go to him because I just think you're fabulous. And we are going to tell people about your school and how to find out about it because I think you're just an excellent teacher in the fact that you're not boring. Like that. He gives real world cases and talks about how things have happened like just yesterday. So it's, to me, it was always really good to hear that instead of just read a book and take a test.
Application, specifically, we were talking about this beforehand. Application of the laws and the rules and regulations is almost impossible without examples, right? It's just really hard to understand the application of it. Otherwise, it's like geometry. Like you can teach me the formula, but without an actual problem, how do I actually know how to use it, right?
Right. And one of the interesting things about me is I'm not only a broker, I am an attorney. So
Yeah.
I can give you the perspective of both when I'm doing my teaching.
All right.
Yeah, and when you're talking about everything, like I said in the beginning, you say to keep you out of real estate jail. In your teaching, since you started, you must have just seen that happen way too much.
Yeah. I've rarely seen anybody go to jail.
Correct. But do we? Has anybody ever?
That would have to be fraudulent or
Yeah.
something that's you just happen to be a real estate agent or something criminal.
Or sexual misconduct has happened.
Interesting. Okay.
Where a guy had a listing and called his listing client and said, I got to talk to you about your listing. Can I come over? And he did, and then starts making the moves on her. She tells him to go get naked in bed, and he does while she calls the cops, and the cops come and arrest him. So, but he went to jail. So,
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot that I could say to this, I'm trying to keep myself out of jail by not commenting on that story. There's so much I could do with that right there.
Well, you were talking about one thing we started with this, both of us were very interested in about because we got on the subject of psychologically affected houses, and you started telling us about what about them has to be disclosed and everything, and we both looked at each other and went, well, we didn't learn it that way. So please, let's dive into psychologically affected houses and what do we have to do with any of those and how do we find out if they are?
Okay, first thing is you need to know what a psychologically affected property is. And there are 5 things in Indiana that make a house psychologically affected. Any death, any felony, it used to be criminal gang, now it's called criminal organization activity, a police action shooting, and the manufacture or distribution of a controlled substance. Okay, those are the 5 things. The law used to say something about someone had HIV. Thank God they've taken that
Yeah,
out.
that's insane.
It
Yeah.
doesn't apply anymore. But those are the 5 things that make a property psychologically affected. Okay, the thing that everybody is told, you don't have to tell unless you're asked. So if the other agent comes up and says, hey, Jay, is your listing psychologically affected? You have to answer. No. You never, ever, ever have to disclose that a property is psychologically affected. The law says that neither the owner nor the agent is liable for the refusal to disclose that a property is psychologically affected.
Hold on a second. Okay, hold up. Okay, so this makes a little bit more sense based off what you and I were talking about.
Yeah.
Then. So, considered psychologically affected is one thing. Requirement to disclose is another thing. And I think that's.
And how are those different?
What
So
do you
you're
mean?
saying if I ask you if anybody died in the house, I don't have to say yes?
No, ma'am, you do not.
Then what did you just say the legality of disclosing those 5 things is?
Yeah, how can I get in trouble? Let's go to. Let's just keep this simple.
Yeah, just
How am I
tell me
getting in
how not
trouble
to
here?
get in trouble.
Okay, again, the law says that neither the owner or the agent is liable for refusal to disclose. So, let's say you know your example, someone hanged himself in the house. Okay,
Yeah.
You know it's psychologically affected. You are asked, Jay, is it psychologically affected? Do you think I can say no?
You cannot say that.
I cannot say no. That's a lie.
Because that's a lie. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you think I can say I don't know?
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
No.
You can't even say that.
Oh,
No,
no.
because
Okay.
you do know.
So you just be like, how's the weather today?
So,
Just pivot.
so what you should say is, I refuse to answer your question.
Okay.
I remember you
Which
saying
answers
that in
the
class,
question.
which is answering the question.
Which tells them, hell yes. It's psychologically affected. But
I would almost rather. I mean, I've always just erred on the side of being transparent and disclosing. You know, because it just goes bad on the back end somehow. Like it just does.
and after the sale, maybe.
Yeah. So I'd rather just disclose. To me, it's just really interesting. I've been asked this question 4, maybe 5 times, and since I've been doing it. 2 times it was a thing, and I did disclose because I was told I'd disclose. They were specifically it's estate sales.
That's
I mean,
what
like
I was gonna
estate
say.
sales is like
That's the first question they asked.
did the
somebody
homeowner
die?
pass away here? You know, and it's got sometimes like I just do an estate sale and I don't know. I'm just selling the house. You know, like I forgot to ask that.
Well,
one,
I don't
you know,
even
but-
ask. So, Jay, should I ask that question and find out?
okay, that's a fabulous question. Okay. A actual lawsuit in northern Indiana. Lady made an offer on a house where terrible
Thanks.
murder things had happened.
Yeah.
Her agent didn't ask. She didn't ask. She bought the house. She moved in. Neighbors came
Neighbors
by.
are perfect.
I'm sorry?
Neighbors are the.
Yeah. Neighbors came by. How could you buy this horrible house? Okay. She immediately sues the list agent and the listing broker because they did not disclose. Court said didn't have to. Our law says they didn't have to. So the only person left for her to sue was her buyer agent,
Correct.
and she won. And the buyer agent had to repurchase the house at contract price and pay for the psychological counseling for her kids until they reached age 18. That is
Shut up.
That is an honest to God Indiana case.
Man,
Stupid.
how long were they in the house?
I have no clue, but a week.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I got to pay for your kids for therapy because of a week?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And it's because your
Dude.
parents are weird, not
So
because
here's
of
the
the
question.
house.
Does E&O cover that?
Not sure. It could.
Yeah.
But if
E&O
you-
cover a house at $300,000 or more.
But
Well, not just, I mean, You'd have to pay for the house. You'd have to pay for the therapy. Like, I mean, you got to think therapy as somebody who goes. I mean, it's 175 a session.
Yeah.
You know, like
At least.
Yeah. Dude, like,
I was going to say, where are you going?
well, some of us need more help than others.
Yeah.
There, Shelly.
No, I'm talking about the price sounds low. So
to
back
get-
to the question.
To get back to your question, do you have to ask? No, you don't have to ask, but I have a little 5-page memorandum. It's 2 pages on what the law is. It's a 3rd page that you give to your buyers and say, would you care if any of these things had happened?
Now, I have asked that because I asked them if it's an estate sale, especially. And I just get back to the estate sale. That's where you automatically think.
Comes to mind, yeah.
Because,
You're just buying a random house in Fishers. Like, it's not on your radar.
No.
but you should ask every one of your buyers, would you mind?
Well, I would always ask the buyer, would you mind? And if they say, we don't care, you have them sign. You put that in your file, and you never have to think about it
Can we
again.
add that to the buyer's agency contract at the bottom? And by the way, can you answer this question for me? Just put that in. I'm not kidding. Just another document.
How many
Wow.
how many suits have been brought around something like this? I'm just curious.
I have no idea.
No way to quantify that.
No.
But
Because I do, when I was in class, this is more around the methamphetamine one, I was told of a situation, and we're allowed to talk about cases, right? I mean,
Yeah.
especially if they've been closed or whatever it was, right? So this is historical. I don't even know when this happened, but there was a house, and some people bought it, and once they moved in, they had a small child, and they had a dog, and the dog started to have some respiratory issues, and then the small baby started to have some respiratory issues. They looked into it. There was residue of methamphetamine manufacture within the bedroom. There was a lawsuit about it, and I believe they found, like, this is me just talking off of my memory here. I believe they found in favor of the plaintiffs, the buyer, because the parents had sent their son, I believe, to treatment 2 or 3 times for drug addiction. And so it was a reasonable for methamphetamine in particular. And so there's a reasonable assumption that there could have been the manufacture of it, and they found in favor of the plaintiff, if I remember correctly. I don't know if you've heard of that one or not,
I'm
but
not
that's
sure.
the one that I was told about.
well, and that's because one of the things we talked earlier about is there is no part on the seller's disclosures about is it psychologically affected as a question, but there is a question: has meth been in there? And if they don't fill that out correctly,
That one's different, yeah.
yeah, because that's a
disclosure for it.
blatant no.
Now,
Is a lie.
I do want to stress one thing that's different about meth. There is a law that says if there's meth, you have to disclose.
Correct.
The psychologically affected manufacture, distribution of controlled substance doesn't include meth. So if you've been selling pot or doing heroin, whatever, you don't have to disclose. Meth, you always have to disclose.
Unless you got caught selling it out of there, because you said manufacture and distribution of a controlled substance. So distribution alone would make it, if you were arrested in that residence for distribution, it would be psychologically impacted based on what you said, though.
Not meth. Meth is not included in the law.
No. I mean, anything else, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true.
Interesting.
So in regards to your question that we should ask the buyer, will this bother you? As an absolute, when you're interviewing a buyer, have them sign off on that. Sounds very interesting, but the part of that too is, as a listing agent, is that a question we should ask?
Okay. The 4th page in my 5-page memo is, yes, I would be bothered. Okay. Now we have the page where the seller has to disclose if it's psychologically affected. Now they can refuse, but we give them, have any of these things ever happened?
Oh,
And then the 5th page is what you give to your seller. Hey, has any one of these things ever happened in your
so
house?
there is a page that you provide to put in with your listing contracts.
Yeah, but if you're the buyers, oh man, that's tough.
What do you where's this 5-page memorandum? Because I think I need it.
How do you submit that in a competitive offer situation?
No, I don't know. Maybe
No,
it's
I mean,
before you
that's
see
what
the
we're
house.
talking about is like real-time application. Like, I understand the rule of it. It's like, how do you apply this in a real-time application? I mean, goodness gracious. There's a house I looked at in Fishers last year, and there was a hole in the ground. And they're like, yeah, that's where the body was. Like we have it. It was remediated. The carpet's missing. We got subfloor going in. Like, sweet, whatever. I just happened to ask the question. You know what I mean? And like, I'm sure they disclosed it to anybody who asked, but that's also on somebody to ask. Like, I'm just educated enough that like there's a perfectly cut square of carpet missing by where like the couch was. Like it's just not rocket science, right? And so I don't know. I mean, I dealt with it with my parents' house, So I don't know. It's just really interesting. I think there's just so many houses, like the odds that somebody has passed away in a house, especially like, let's talk about houses in Broad Ripple, right?
Exactly.
Odds are like good, like 50-50 that somebody passed away in that house circa like 1934 or something
Or
like
1950 and past.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did. They just took care of it all in the house.
Yeah, my favorite Broad Ripple psychologically affected story. I was managing a company, and I got a call from one of my agents on a Saturday morning. Jay, we're here at the house getting ready to have our inspection. The owner has fallen, hit his head on the center island, and died. He is lying here dead on the floor. What should we do? I'm like, maybe call the police.
Yeah, dude, you're like,
Call Jay first. Jay is God. We'll call him first.
They did call me first. And
they were there at an inspection, and the seller was there at inspection, and he fell and died.
Well, before
no, he had done it the night before. He was lying dead on the floor.
Jeff just had that happen during an inspection.
Jeff died?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry.
He was walking
So why are you
into.
looking at me? She said it, dude.
Jeff just had that happen. The inspector or the appraisal and the inspection was that day, and so Jeff was running late with his client, and the appraiser showed up right before him. They were supposed to get there at the same time, and the appraiser walked in, and the contractor was dead.
Yeah.
And so, he called Jeff and said, when you get here, you might not want your client, because she was a female, and I think they think we're more scared than anything. The question he asked, turned around and asked her immediately, is it going to bother you that somebody has died in this house? Do you want to move forward?
Yeah.
And she said, I don't care.
Yeah.
Probably should have got that in writing.
The end result of my Broad Ripple, they came back, rescheduled the inspection, and bought the house. They didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you said earlier, we talked about this because I think I remember back when I started that the question was, is it haunted? And everybody has an idea of what is it haunted means. And in the South, I think there's a law that they must disclose if it's haunted. And I have a rider that I took off of their way of selling houses down there. And in October, we put this rider on our top of our listings that says not haunted. Because I thought my understanding was in the South, they have to have a rider on their listing if it's not haunted. Because
That's
they've
so
just
subjective, though.
It is subjective, but there's so many houses down
What
there
if I
from the
want to sell those
1800s.
like potentially could be if you want it to be?
And how are you going to fix that?
Yeah, man.
Well,
So what's the answer to all that?
the simple answer in Indiana is haunting is not considered anything.
Yeah.
Because nobody can prove it?
Whether it can
Thank
be
you.
proved, can't be proved,
Yeah.
whatever.
Don't get me started in an argument with
Yeah.
Shelly right now.
I know,
Or
because,
you.
because
I think it's
I'm a
all
ghost hunter.
fascinating,
We
but-
have a group that's called Spirit Realty, and 3 others of us. And you said you're a ghost hunter. So
I have been
you're
on
surrounded.
several ghost hunts, yes.
No, I love it. I'm super fascinated with it. I don't bring it into play like professionally or like
well, it's not
houses.
professional. Nobody's paying me.
I know,
but we
man.
get asked because they know we do it. We'll have all kinds of agents reach out to us and say, can you go check this house out? And you'll be amazed how many around here have had all these issues
I
happen in
agree.
these
there's
houses.
one in Noblesville, I know, and then like there's
They're
the one
everywhere.
that you did that we don't discuss, but that we discuss because it's one of my favorite houses ever. Like I don't know, there's a lot there. For me, I struggle with it because like I've just never seen it, even though like I watch the shows. Like I think I've always wanted to experience it. I say
You're
that
going on
not
the next
experiencing
one.
it, but
You're
then when you
going.
experience it, you're like, well, this is a bad idea. I was scared shitless, right? But like I mean, we. My friends, growing up in Martinsville, they lived in a house, and it was like a stop on the Underground Railroad. You know what I mean? Like, there's all types of interesting things out there that you could put into it. It's different with newer houses. So that's why, like, I think older houses, like these kind of things tend to come up a little bit more and you think about it more. I'm serious. There is not a person out there who discusses if somebody has passed away in a house that was built since 2000, unless it's an estate sale, most likely.
Well,
like it just doesn't come up, right?
It doesn't come up, and it didn't come up. I know specifically a house in Carmel was a brand new build, and of course nobody's asking it. It's brand new. Nobody's lived in it, anything like that. And again, like we said, the neighbors always let everybody know what is going on when people move in. And they pulled their truck up, and a neighbor walked over and said, "Did you know somebody died in this house?" And of course, everybody's like, "What?" Now, we all knew in the neighborhood. So I know that, and it was so well known that I think the listing agent should have known, and the buyer's agent maybe not, but the builder's son hung himself in the garage. Nobody had ever lived there. Nobody had ever asked. So don't forego a brand new house or a newer house to ask that question.
I mean, there's just so much there. Like, I know over by where I live, there's a house in Geist, and I knew a gentleman, and he was a roofer, and he was roofing a house in Geist, and he fell through, and he passed away. You know what I mean? Like, does that get this?
Yeah, there are several contractor cases where people building the house have, like, falling into pits and killed. It's psychologically affected.
That's crazy. What else is psychologically affected? So what else you said? All right, we don't really have too many RICO Act situations here. Is one of the ones you were talking about. So we got the distribution, which I think is really interesting. The felony one. Okay, so that was the felony one I wanted to talk to you about, because my understanding would be that the felony had to occur at the residence or associated with the residence. Obviously, you just being a felon is not sufficient. But I mean, like, there's just a lot there. Like, you could get a second DUI. I'm in recovery, everybody. I think everybody knows that at this point, so I know a lot of crazy stories, but you can get a DUI in your driveway, and if it's your second one, that's a felony. You know, like, I mean, does that come up, right? Like, I mean, does that count basically under what that law is?
Technically, it could.
Interesting.
Am I going to disclose that? No.
Yeah.
If they ask, I'm going to say, at that point, I might say I don't know, but maybe. You know, but
I'd for sure tell them, because, like, I don't want them to think it's something really, like, super bad. You know, because if you're like, I can't tell you this, I'm like, what happened here?
Well, the question that is, like, so you're the listing agent and you get asked that question. You would have to ask for the permission of the seller to disclose that, right?
Yes, you would.
But then you're the real estate agent under our license law would have to say, "I'm sorry, I can't go by what you just said. I have to do what I need to do." So, like, if what you just said, I'm going to go on the air of I'm telling them. So if you just told me that somebody died in your house or anything like that, and I get asked if somebody died, and they told me, the seller said, "Don't tell anybody," that puts me in a position of
I refuse
knowing.
to answer your question.
Okay, thank
And
you.
you're
can
completely
there.
protected.
Thank
But that's
you.
interesting, though, because we are under a requirement for certain things that we have to disclose if we know. This just happens to fall under, I mean, what's that difference right there? Of, like, certain things that if I am aware of it, I'm required to disclose, regardless of what my client wants, right?
Horrific mold.
Yeah, exactly. Structural problem,
Yeah.
whatever, right? So there's just a different category that this would fall under, where I'm not required to disclose. It's at my client's behest, what I do or do not do with it, and what I'm held to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, one other additional funky thing about this law.
Oh, yeah, because this couldn't be more convoluted than it already is. Yeah.
Yes, it could. If you know or reasonably suspect that any one of these things has ever happened any time on the property, it is psychologically affected.
Hold
So
up. Say that one more
reasonable
time.
suspicion makes it psychologically.
Oh, dude, I've had some clients. I love all my clients, but I've had some clients where I like, oh my goodness.
Okay, I think I'm still confused, and y'all probably are, but let's go on to something.
No, I want to do this for an hour.
Yeah, we could just
This
talk
is
on this
awesome.
forever and still go round and round. Like, what other things in your school do you try to emphasize that you know they're going to walk out that door and trying to become a realtor, and they really need to understand this law or this issue? What are you seeing most agents? Because I know you were the lawyer part of brokers, and you've been there as managing brokers. What do people get in trouble with the most?
Well, I don't really know, excuse me, for sure what they get in trouble for, but I know what they could get in trouble for. The things that I really stress are really boring. You have to have an expiration date on your listing, and it has to be in the listing. Who doesn't know that? But there are people who, I'd say once a month, hey, Jay, can I just say to be determined? No, you can't. What do you put in the purchase agreement for things you want to stay? Okay, well, I want the lawnmower to stay. Well, can you really ask for a lawnmower? Not so. Just the little details like that are what I'm not really supposed to teach.
Most of the things
You
that
really
people,
aren't supposed to teach how to fill it in.
I am not supposed to teach. I'm supposed to teach how to pass the state exam.
Yeah, you're teaching law, and you're not teaching
Practice.
practice.
I had a buyer, do a lot of listings, and the buyers, send me offers. I'm amazed at how offers come across to me and how many are not filled out, like missing boxes everywhere. And this one, it was, a lot of the parts were missing. And I told the buyer's agent, I said, here's everything that needs to be fixed. Most of your parts is what's going to make you get this. And she literally came back to me and she goes, well, can you write it for me and let me know how to fill that in? Because I didn't know about this or that. And I'm like, it's up to, when she was on a team. So if you're a team leader there, you should be doing that. But, Tucker, I can just say Tucker is very good about, they have a class after you get your license. They start all over and teach you classes again for 12 weeks, kind of more about what you're saying, right. How to fill in a purchase agreement, how to fill in a listing contract, because you're saying it's not in the school. Well, that's one of the main things you need to know.
It is.
Everybody goes through our Tucker training with me, and then on top of it, your first 5 to 10, both purchase and listings, like I'm writing it with you.
Oh, yeah. I do the same thing.
When I was new, and this isn't on anybody else, this was me being afraid or whatever, like I was reading the blanks, not the words around it. And I made a mistake on my very first contract, and I had to send my next 5 contracts through my manager before I submitted it. And I know contracts inside and out now because I learned all the words around the blanks, Yeah. Like I can tell you what is on, like line 19, line 23. Like I can reference specifically how, like when clients talk to me, I'm like, we're protected. It's this line right here. This is where you're protected. This is what it says, blah, 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 right? Because there's some people don't know, like, where's our safety nets on things. And it's in the contract. It really is, right?
Well, and you talk about, I remember, I'm sure you teach this, there's a difference between void and voidable.
Huge.
And that is something maybe to talk about as well, because that's stuck in my head. And I use it now all the time. I'm like, your document's voidable. And they're like, what does that mean? And I go, well, it could become voidable. It's not, you can't void it right now. And they're like, what? So I'm not trying to be a smart ass and, use words, but people don't understand that difference, if you don't mind.
Okay. The first thing you need to know about void is what is valid.
Get closer.
The requirement for a contract to be valid is it has to be voluntary agreement among competent parties for consideration to do something legal. Okay? If it meets those 5 things, it's valid. Okay? If it misses one or more of those things, it is void.
Can we define competent?
You're serious.
I'm dead serious.
At least 18 years old.
Yeah.
Not having been judged by a court to be mentally challenged.
It's not what I was looking for.
Yeah. See, and let's talk about the underage. Okay. A person that is 17 years and 11 months signs a contract. That contract is voidable. Mm-hmm. It could be undone by the 17-year-old, not by the other side, but by the 17-year-old.
Because he was not at age when he signed the contract.
So those are the ones what I talk about. It's funny, avoidable. The 17 and 11 months old person decides later, I changed my mind. you don't want to have anything in front of you that anybody can say is voidable because you never know when they want to void it.
Right. Now, the minute the kid turns 18, it's a contract. He can't back out anymore. Okay, so.
Ooh, but if he signed it after turning 18, but if he signed it prior to 18, wouldn't it still be voidable because it was signed prior to?
It's voidable until he turns 18. And then the
Really?
voidability goes away.
So even once he's 18, he can't be like, I signed it under the age 18, it don't count?
Nope.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have guessed that one. What do you think about like putting NA in where blanks are, there's so many blanks within a purchase agreement, right? And so I have a thought on this. I just don't want to put it out there till I hear what you say.
Well,
And then you'll have a change of thought.
No, I just won't mention it. No, I'll be honest.
okay. Let me say one thing first.
Yeah.
One of the things that when I was training as a manager, one of the things I trained, hey, when you're filling out a purchase agreement, don't just read through it and find the blanks. Tab through the document.
Correct.
Because that goes to the next blank, the next place. So always do that. But now you're tabbing through and you get to something that doesn't apply. You don't care. It doesn't matter.
I can give you an example. Line 97. That's the one I know. You know what I'm talking about? That one bothers me, and like relocation companies won't allow it. And this is where I kind of thought about it as well when I saw that come through. Line 97 is after it says closing to be on or before June 30th or within so many days
whichever
of
is later.
Yeah, whichever is later. So my conversation back to the buyers, I'm sorry that I'm going to either counter that or if you want to change that, because I need a solid closing date. And if we're closing on June 30th and you say enter before, if we have some really weird thing going on, we could now be November 30th instead. So I never allow on or before a certain date. I say that is in A. Yep. And I know sometimes people think I'm a little picky on my paperwork, but I'm protecting my seller.
Yeah. Now, along that line, I wouldn't hate it if you said NA. I would rather put lines through.
Dash through. Okay. I put NA. So I started doing that when I was about 9 months in the business because somebody sent it to me, and I was like, it was more digestible for me as the list agent, right? And then it's easy to convey it because you're going over it with your client.
Well,
and
you've
there's no
shown
oh, this is left blank. Did they forget it?
You recognize you didn't forget it.
But I like the lines actually. I really do. NA is just what I've done because it clearly shows I saw this and it does not apply. But the reason I brought it up is because since we're like really in the weeds of legality here, I could make an argument where NA could actually bite me in the ass on a certain blank. You know what I mean? And so that's why I was like, I do NA. No, because it's really not the correct thing to be put in that blank. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Okay.
I think either way, NA or lines is acceptable.
Yeah.
I like the lines because you haven't forgotten it. You've marked through it. And you've moved on. Yeah,
I do NA, and I always have, and I like it. But so I was prepared to fall on that sword, even though I laid it out there because I was like, he's going to say, don't do this. And I was like, no, it's what I do, and it honestly it makes the contract look more professional in my opinion.
Yeah, there's one provision in the purchase agreement that I want to point out. I don't know why it comes up or came up today, but line 240. And 241 of the purchase agreement basically says buyer gives an inspection response. Mm-hmm. Seller gives his inspection response. Mm-hmm. If buyer gives another inspection response, the seller may terminate the agreement.
You have to answer and say, I'm not doing any of it, right? You have to respond?
It just says if the buyer continues with a subsequent inspection response, the seller can terminate. I think that is a ludicrous
Can terminate.
May.
Yeah.
But,
so because
but same for the buyer though, because if
as is addendum.
No, without that.
I don't want to get
if I send a BIR over, and I get an if I send a buyer's inspection response over, I'm representing a buyer, right? And seller counters me back, right?
And says he's going to do half the things.
He's going to do half of it. I can walk right there.
Yes.
Yes, no, you can't.
If it's reasonable.
No, you can walk right there if what he is refusing to do is a defect.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
yes,
apologize.
yeah.
Well,
we wouldn't have we wouldn't have asked for anything.
Let's do that real quick. So, like for me, yes, defects. I love talking about this because it is. So I try to be very good about this with defects and everything. And when I do talk on a BI when I'm on an inspection situation, I do always have a conversation with my clients, regardless of which side I'm on, of like what you can really ask for and what you can't ask for, but I can ask for anything, right? So that's how my conversation always goes. So I apologize. Yes, you're correct there. If it's anything, and then everybody says like a defect is described, within the purchase agreement. My argument has always been it's insanely vaguely described. And I'd love to pull one up if I had one right now, but it says that could impact
the value of the home, the longevity of the home, or the health and safety of an occupant.
And that can be super subjective.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, it can be so freaking subjective on, man, I'm trying to think of one I deal with.
Here's the question I always ask about that. You have a $400,000 house. You get an inspection report that says there's one thing wrong with this whole freaking house.
Yeah.
You have a broken thermal seal in one window.
Yeah.
Is that a defect?
That's hard because that does impact the value. Because like I have a window, right, and it's
significant value,
significant value, which is not determined either.
But water is between the panes. Water goes down the panes into the wall. Water causes mold. Mold is a defect. So, is that a defect?
So here's another one though. Then right, what's the number one thing I see on every single inspection? Drainage, downspouts, right? That's going to impact long-term, performance of this, right? Like it just does.
So that's where
I'm like, it's super gray. Like you could kind of.
But everybody's negotiating, and that's the whole part of it. And I'm going to ask you this because I know the part is when somebody does go says no, whether or not you've done a BIR, SIR, BIR, SIR, and then the buyer says, I'm out. You're trying to protect earnest money at all times on the inspection response. So my question for you is, I'm in the middle of this right now. My buyers, I didn't know the answer to this, and so we just sent us inspection response. They found significant structural damage in the house to the point where the walls were moving. We didn't see this when we saw it because I'm pretty picky about looking at floors, cracked, significant. They're like, I don't think so. And I said, well, we have to ask the seller to repair it. Or we can't just say, oh, here's a mutual release. Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, you have to
give them the ability,
which is what we did
first.
And they're like, well, what if they say they'll fix it all? And I'm
then
like,
you're stuck with the house.
Yeah.
So I just dealt with one. I was advising one of my team members. Then it comes into the buyer's reasonable expectations.
That's horrible.
I know, because they're like, oh, well, they got the cheapest contractor. They like this shit happens, right? And they're like, oh, well, we went to I'd love to throw out some names of contractor companies right now that are just expensive versus other ones. But like, oh, well, we went to this company and it's $11,000, and like, we went to this other guy and he's licensed and he's fine and everything, and it's $4,000, right? And it's like, well, he must be cutting corners. I'm like, well, or like you went to the most expensive person too, right? And I have seen that become a bigger headache than anything is what is a reasonable expectation. To me, if it is fixed, paid for, they're qualified, and there's a warranty, that's sufficient. I mean, that really is. I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah.
Price should not come into play when something is considered reasonable, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
I love this. I love this last section of like.
okay, let's talk about one of my favorite things.
I want to negotiate against him now.
he's done with it.
So get in the gray area, right? Because
Exactly.
there's so much of it, you know.
Exactly. When I was managing, I had a woman who's been in the business forever and knows her stuff, but she's on a team. She always writes her stuff under the team name, not her own.
Yeah.
So she wrote an offer on a pretty well-known broker's listing. It was accepted. She gave an inspection response, and he, within 15 minutes, we are unwilling or unable to fix anything. Here's our mutual release. Sign it.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, we can accept the defect, right?
Yeah.
And she came to me and said, yeah, of course you can. So she went back to him and said, well, I talked to Jay Rose, and he said, we can just waive the defect and we'll move forward. And the gentleman made a very clear statement. Please have Jay Rose call me. Because he said, Jay Rose doesn't know what he's talking about.
Oh, this sounds awesome.
So I called him and I said, I really don't know a thing about a real estate contract or what it says. But can you tell me this line that says they can waive and move forward? Can you tell me why that doesn't apply? Click. Closed on the deal in a week.
There's so many times that they're just like hoping they can say something and the other person will go, okay.
You know darn well he had a better offer.
Yeah.
That's happened to me before too, and that's where I don't know. I don't even want to go there. But that brings into me the as-is addendum. Like as-is addendum is good for a buyer, bad for a seller, in my opinion. And on all my listings, I put no as-is addendums accepted. Because of the verbiage that you just said, is that the seller has the right to repair anything requested. So if a buyer wants to do an as-is addendum and walk, what can they walk over? Again, what do they determine is or isn't something they can walk on?
That's a really simple answer.
Yeah. If it's disclosed on the seller's disclosure, you can't walk over it.
Right.
Well,
The way they can walk is if they find in their inspection a previously undisclosed defect.
A GFI.
which every house is going to have.
So a GFI,
you know.
they could literally hand me the as-is addendum and say, we're done. I mean, and say mutual release. To me, the way the as-is addendum reads is, we have found something we don't like. Here's our mutual release.
That's a defect, not just something.
Well, and
that has to be a
GFIs are
defect.
considered maybe
Fire
that or
hazard.
not. So
But you
that's
could just
what-
be like, I'll fix the GFCI.
Correct.
You know.
So they say, we didn't like the fact that there's no GFIs in the house. We want a mutual release. Well, my seller would be like, I would have fixed all that. It doesn't even give your seller the chance to respond. That's the reason I say,
But you could
I
have a
don't want one.
conversation.
No, they don't. When I was
could.
accepting them, it's a great way to get out if you find a better
Oh,
house.
no, I agree with that. I mean, we're talking about somebody's wanting to walk because it's
a great way.
situation, not because you just want to walk.
So I don't know. I don't like that. But for a buyer, it's a great way to put an offer in because you can do your inspection and walk, and I wouldn't have had to do an inspection response.
I personally,
Jay's going to jump in here in a minute.
No, 'cause I'm curious what he thinks on this. Like, based on how I see real estate practice here locally, right? We're not an attorney state, right? We're not like Illinois. With common practice of like what I tend to see, I'm a firm believer on most houses. I can get into or out of any contract if I know what I'm trying to do ahead of time because of the timelines and the vagary in a lot of it, if you know what you're doing. What are your thoughts on that?
I would have to say that you're pretty correct.
Right.
There's so many different things that could be argued.
Yeah.
I think there's something like 17 different places that we're held not liable in the purchase agreement. Survey, inspections. It's not our fault if the inspection does. So we're waived of liability 17 different times in the purchase agreement, I think. So
The way to prevent it at its best is if you're a listing agent and you disclose, and you're just really thorough and you know what you're doing, and if you have a good product and you put it out there and there's just
And you
nothing
call
wrong
the
with it,
lender
right?
and ask the lender to make sure that's a good pre-approval letter.
Can't
There's
even do
so
that.
much to do with.
I'd see you and I disagree with that because
Mm-hmm.
a lender is legally not allowed to say, no, he's a shit client. He can't get approved. Every lender you call, they have to. They have their own code of ethics. You can't call a lender and they're like, nah, 50-50 at best. Every time you call a lender, when people call a lender, have you ever had them be like, I don't know, I'm 20% chance we get this to the finish line? They're not allowed to. Like,
Yes.
it's pointless
I
to call
have.
them. But
I
they're,
don't.
so they're not supposed to.
I know. Well, I mean, sometimes my conversation is, can you close in 2 weeks like this purchase
that's
agreement
different.
has?
That's
I mean,
different.
just there's a lot of questions I
But
have.
you can't ask, like, are they qualified? Like, I sent you a pre-approval. Like, that's the reality of it. I don't know. What do you think on this?
Pre-approval isn't worth what it's written on.
It isn't.
Correct.
And then we get into, like, pre-quals and, like, all, like, give me a break. You know what I mean? Like, lender's going to say, like, yeah, we're good. Let's see what happens.
Because he wants the deal too. Well, I think.
And they're held to guidelines as the same as we are. So it's the reality of it.
Yeah. So that's the thing about it is I will always tell my seller, because it's the seller that's going to be hurt the most, is going back on the market.
Yep.
Is, do you really want to fight this issue and go back on the market and lose 20 grand because you're back on the market and the sale price is going to definitely change
Over GFCIs.
over what this buyer's doing? And
Plus, you're paying more mortgage payments and it's just-
carrying costs, yeah. So it really is down to, again, the agents working together, having communication, and trying to keep the deal together. A buyer wants to buy and a seller wants to sell, as they always say. But there's many times a buyer doesn't want to buy after you've moved forward.
Yeah, and there's times where, like, there gets to be some toxicity, animosity, and you have a $500,000 transaction that is being hung up on $1,500 of something insane, and it's like, what are we doing?
One of the other things that frosts me is
It's a good word. I like that.
when a buyer puts something in the purchase agreement, it's accepted, it goes to the bank, and the bank says, no, you can't ask for the riding lawnmower. You can't ask whatever. So, bank says to them, rewrite the purchase agreement, put that riding lawnmower in an addendum.
Personal property.
And they say put it in an addendum. And then hand us the contract, but don't hand
Ignore
us
that.
the addendum.
Can't do
In other words, please commit
Lie.
mortgage fraud.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is do the agreement regarding personal property. But
I never let anything like that be on the purchase agreement, so I know what we're heading down towards with a mortgage. So again, I feel like sometimes people think I try to make them rewrite mortgages or rewrite purchase agreements, but I am also trying to help make sure everybody makes it to the end without a bump. And I already see a bump before we've even executed the purchase agreement.
But I think if you're a good agent, you do that. Somebody, when I made my mistake, my very first one, the agent on the other side called me and told me, right?
Yeah.
And it was actually Angela that we were talking about, right? Angela Horner, speaking very highly of her.
Right.
She helped me. Like, I was brand new, and I checked the wrong box for taxes. Like, I just did. And she was like, hey, like, and she didn't even do it right away. Like, we were like, she's like, hey, you checked the wrong box. And I was like, okay. And so I talked to my manager, and she's like, yeah, hey, like, we should probably, like, let's look at these things, and so, like, I've never forgotten that. And so, like, I always try to.
Well, I'm not saying I go back at them and go, no way in hell
No,
I'm going to
you're
accept
helping
this.
them.
I do.
You're
I call them
helping
and I go, we can't really have that. You have a mortgage. There is a personal property addendum if you don't mind rewriting it and putting it there. Or if you've got the closing till November or December in there because of line 97.
No, I think
Can
you're
you?
doing a
I don't
really
want to
good thing.
have them fall apart because of things that I see that could stumble us all up coming forward.
One of the ones that everybody always overlooks is the insurance one. Like,
Yeah, they
you
don't
ever
know
find,
why.
Hey, you had 10 days to get your insurance quote. Have you gotten that taken care of yet? It's in the contract.
Explain why that's very important. I think a lot of agents have no idea why that's so important.
I had a bank foreclosure, and it was way out in the country, and it was on fuses instead of a circuit breaker. And the insurance quote on fuses was like $10,000, and put it on circuit breaker, $1,000. And when you go and say, hey, $10,000, it's not reasonable insurance, which is other language, we're not buying.
Well, the mortgage just got declined.
Exactly.
Oh, like aluminum wiring.
Yeah.
Not everybody alone on aluminum wiring.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
It's interesting.
We need to know within, I say, 10 days to have that mortgage commitment or this commitment letter from the insurance company.
Yeah.
If we're falling apart over things none of us knew. And that's where sometimes people put in 30, and I'm like, we're closing in 28 days. And I will go back and say, this needs to be much lower. Well, why? What does it matter? We'll have it by closing. I'm like,
I need it way before closing. Yeah.
We are way before closing. We need to know if we're
even the
falling
lender
apart.
needs it before that because they have to send
Yeah.
out the CD with everything
Yeah.
in it. But anyways, I want you to come back on. I think it's really interesting to go through all of these things. I think one of the reasons I'm very confident as an agent is because I did make some mistakes, and I have learned how to, I've done the extra legwork on my own to learn. You have obviously the school. I was talking to you. I wasn't able to do my continuing education back in December when Tucker did theirs or whatever. But so I need to do yours because I have to do my continuing education. But for me, I always want to do continuing education of stuff I really want to learn, and then I also. I'm just a nerd, and when I read the contract, I just dive into it sometimes, and I'm oh, I wonder what this means or whatever.
Every word in a contract has a reason for being put there.
100%.
There's not even the word that. There's a reason.
The punctuation
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
Literally what type of punctuation
Yep.
actually matters.
So don't jump over 2 words. So tell us about your school and what everybody could learn about that.
Okay, well, I could talk to you for hours about the school. I will try to do it in a couple of minutes. But the first thing I'll tell you, we have continuing education coming up in May on the 15th and 16th, and in June on the 26th and 27th. That is provided either.
That's right at the death.
Pardon me?
That's right at the deadline.
Yeah.
That way.
That's for me, people like me.
Yeah. That can be either live in person at the Forum Conference Center in Fishers, or it can be virtual. So you just come on Zoom. Either one is fine. We have 6 2-hour topics. They're fun topics, I believe. One of them is how to stay out of real estate jail.
Isn't that always one of yours?
It should be, but
Do you serve lunch?
yes, we do serve a
All right.
very good lunch.
You got me already.
It's a tremendous lunch. People always love it. We have over 75 courses that you can take online. And right now we're running a $49 online special. Now, you have to take tests. Anything online in Indiana has to have a test.
As it should.
But the virtual and the live don't have tests.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's one good thing. We also provide the 30-hour post licensing. If I have any of the people listening that are fairly new, within 2 years of getting your license, you have to take that 30-hour post licensing. And if you want to become managing broker eligible, or if you want to become all-way managing broker, we have the 24-hour managing broker class. Those right now are online. We'll probably do one of them this late summer live if we can get enough people.
Can I ask you a question on the 30-hour one?
Yeah.
So that wasn't when I started, that wasn't something we had to do. So that 30-hour, is that another state test they take and they have to pass that one, or they lose their license, or is that just kind of like CE?
It is CE. They take the 30-hour with us. We give them a test, and then we tell the state whether they passed or didn't pass.
What happens if they don't pass?
They retake the test.
Over and over and over. Okay.
Same as probably the license.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious about that. So, I mean, they're making everybody do it, but then what happens if
You
they...
probably have to pass it within,
75%.
but you probably just have to pass the test, regardless of amount, within the 2-year time
Yes,
frame, right?
that is
Otherwise, you probably have to go back and start all over, really. Right. But you got a huge window there.
Yeah.
Because when you do your 90-hour pre-license class, from when you graduate that, you have a year to pass that test.
You have a year to pass the state test, and then once you pass the state test, you have a year from the date you passed to find a broker to work with.
Yeah.
So, but one of the things I will say, and if you want to have a pen ready to take down a website, to find out all there is about our school, please go to our website, which is IBREA of Indianapolis, IBREA of Indianapolis.com. You scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there's a link. You can get our newsletter. And our newsletter has our CE events, our managing broker classes, our 30-hour classes, plus it has tons of wonderful articles. My business partner, Charlie, puts them all together. Right now, it is being sent to about 35,000
Oh, wow.
people.
I highly recommend it. I'm on that list, and I get it every month, and there's always something good in there.
Yeah,
I think I get it.
and we're getting over 27,000 opens on every single one of them.
Yeah, because it's
So
good. It's really good.
It is, and it's all
content.
Charlie. I love to take credit for it, but I can't. But,
Thank you, Charlie.
yes, exactly. Real quickly about this won't really happen to apply to a lot of you, but our 90-hour pre-licensing, we do it 5 different ways. You do it online or virtual. The virtual, you come to a Zoom class on Tuesday and Thursday nights. Online, you do it whenever you want. And then we have a $3.99, a $5.99, and a $7.99 price point. Bare bones, extra stuff, plus prepaying for the 30-hour.
Oh,
Oh, that's a good idea. And for anybody who wants to get into real estate, the very first thing I was taught, that's a write-off.
Yes, it is.
That's where it started, right there.
try to make everything a write-off somehow.
That is a write-off.
Yeah.
So keep your receipt from IBREA.
Exactly. So that's the less than 5-minute blurb about our school.
Yeah.
Well, I'll probably, man, I'd prefer to do in person. I just do. It's hard for me to stay focused virtually, right? Because, like, let's just call it for what it is. It's ADD or whatever.
For me, it's just setting the time. Like, I don't know why this is for me, but even webinars, all this stuff, I have things I need to do, and it'll be pushed to tomorrow and pushed to tomorrow because I can't get to it. But when it's like set down and you have to be there from 1 to 2 in person, like I spend the time to drive all the way there, sit there from hour 1 to 2, and come back.
I do
But
better.
I just don't. If it's not something I'm going to have to do with somebody or be somewhere, it gets pushed down the line.
Yeah.
And I do mine on usually June 29th.
It gives me anxiety to push it that close.
Yeah.
Because I'll be like,
Well,
I'll
of
get-
course it
I'll get
does.
sick
What if
or,
you're
like-
sick?
Yeah,
What if
yeah.
you're
I know,
Tired,
well-
like, I'm screwed.
But
now.
let
Yeah.
me
I'm
give-
always anxious, so.
Yeah, let me give one ad for the school. If you look around, we are the only 5-star Google school anywhere in central Indiana.
Nice.
Nobody else is.
Well,
a
if
5-star
you've just listened to Jay for the past, 50 minutes or so, you can see why.
I feel
Lots
pretty
of
good,
wealth
though.
of information.
I feel like currently I'm not going to real estate jail. Like I feel like I'm currently brushed up enough. But I feel like if we went into more topics, I might start to feel less confident.
Well, I think it has to do with anything you're questioning. You don't go through the process of doing it and then ask questions later.
no.
Like you always try to find out. So do I, and I think most people do. Is I don't know if I should do that. Let me go ask my managing broker, and then find out. Not after.
Well, and I always just want to learn more. I like learning.
Right.
So to me, this is what I do for a living.
That's
It
what I like to do.
consumes my life.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly asked questions that make me have to go find answers, which is just part of it. Right?
Well, and for me, what it's all about is this is the person I'm working with biggest asset. I want to make sure that what I'm doing in my business with them is going to be protecting them and getting them where they need to go. And the process is not stressful, but the whole process is done as it should because I'm the professional that's been hired. That's me. And so I'm adamant like you are of just learn, or, listen. Listening is a whole nother thing of other agents. There's always a wealth of knowledge of everybody around you. So like you said, when I first started, Michelle Shepard was my, Shelly, let me just stop here and let's talk about all of this that you did in your purchase agreement. And it was a great transaction, but she was nice.
It's hard when you're new because you're drinking from a fire hose the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much. So much information, and then on top of it, you have to be detail-oriented. And if you fall into a level of perfectionism, you'll just get paralyzed by all of it. And so, you just have to find a way to operate and learn on the, learn and be careful and all of these other things.
And be
It's
open-minded.
just
If
too much.
if an agent comes to you and says this, they're not trying to put you down, they're trying to help. And
Yeah.
agents that are more in the business than the brand new ones, always remember to help, not hurt.
Yeah. All right. We'll have you back on because I want to talk more. I'll go into the stats real quick for Fishers. I had 52 go on the market. You got to think we're coming out of Easter. We're coming out of spring break. we're getting ready to roll into May this week, which is crazy.
I know, isn't it?
It's already May. Last year, June was the highest transaction month for the state of Indiana, well, us locally, right? I believe the state of Indiana, actually. But so that would be on par for listings coming on in May, right? Is generally like how you would kind of read into that. And as we ramp up, I mean, I had 52 go on the market this week. 35 of them are still active, so only 17 pinned within 7 days. But I had 42 total pinned in a week. There's 139 on the market. Of the stuff that sold in a week, or sold last week, I have average days on market is 12 and the median is 5. But if I actually look like everything that is currently pending, I mean, there's like 100. I can't even remember what it was, like 160 or something like that. I had 27 days average on market and 5 median. Noblesville, I had 48 go on the market, anywhere from, okay, this is a whole other thing I want to talk about, anywhere from $1
That's an auction.
to 1.725. I know it's an auction. It's actually in the same neighborhood of one that I'm listing, and it's really interesting because it's not a normal brokerage site. It's an agent. And I know the agent. He's a good agent. But then you have in there, like, hey, this is how you do the auction and all that stuff. And I get it. You have to put a number on there. I just hope that gets corrected in the MLS or in the BLC whenever it does sell and gets put in the system correctly and everything like that. Anyway, so I had 48 go on the market. 31 of them are still active. 17 pinned, same as Fisher's. I had 41 that actually pinned last week, which is one less than Fisher's. Average days on market, I have 152 on the market. Average days on market for the ones that pinned last week was like 19, medium of 5, and then for everything that pinned, I think there's like 170 that are currently pending. I mean, it could have pinned like 6 weeks ago. Yeah, it just doesn't matter. It's just pending. Average days on market is 30, and the median is 7. So, I mean, we're getting down there. I think the thing that's really interesting is, I mean, 42 and 41 pending in 7 days. That's a big number.
Carmel had 51.
That's a really big number. I mean, you got to think like 3 weeks ago I was at 25. I mean, I'm almost done.
Yeah, like we were talking, maybe it was spring break issues and stuff like that. But with Carmel, 41 hit the market, 51 total pinned. So we lost 10. And one of the things I'm hearing from different events I go to and or just different articles is that our inventory is going up and up and up, and it's starting to, be 20% more than last year or something. So it makes me wonder, with all these pendings and seeing Carmel lose 10, I don't see it at Carmel. So, you have to be very careful of area by area of what everybody's saying is happening on all that. But so 24 of those 41 pended, so over half of them pended immediately within the first 7 days. And the average days in the past 7 days of all the pendings was 17, and the median was 8. So Carmel is just, a really good spot for sales. 134 are currently active, anyone from 190 to 4.9. I kind of took notes of this for because I was kind of interested when I saw how many were in Zionsville, over 1 million. So in Carmel, 29 are over 1 million active. In Zionsville, 30 are over 1 million. And in Westfield, 14 are over 1 million. There's a lot of high-end houses out there for sale. And I always wonder, when are those going to start to make the days on market change, keep those out or whatever? But they're selling too, They're selling. Carmel had 130 sell.
You know what's crazy, real quick, to address that? There's one more in Zionsville than Carmel, and their census is totally different. What is Zionsville? Zionsville's like 50,000 people, and I think Carmel's like 150,000 people.
In regards to what's the question, or what's
how many people live there?
Oh yeah.
And that just says a lot about Zionsville. Because everybody wants to think Carmel is affluent and all these other things, when Zionsville is a third of the size and actually has more properties on the market that are over $1 million.
Yeah, I was actually kind of shocked. That's why I just kind of wrote down that on my notes. In Carmel, there's 130 that sold in the past 30 days, and the average days on market was 23, median was 4. So Carmel's staying right at a median of under a week. The average, though, you got to think about it, it's under 30. So, Westfield's 49 hit the market, 25 of those pended, so half pended, but a total of 48 hit the market, 49 pended. So, again, we lost inventory in Westfield. Average days on market the past week was 29, median was 7. There's 155 that sold in the past 30 days, 38 average days on market, and 13's median. That came way down from what I've been saying because of all the new builds. Those are usually a lot longer, but now Westfield's 38 average on the past 30 days and 29 in the past 7 days. So Westfield's starting to speed up. There were 210 currently active, and 92 of those are new builds, so nothing's changed there. Zionsville, 19 hit the market. Half of those sold, pended at 9, 11 total pended. Average days on market in the past 7 days was 4, and the median was 3. So they're selling quickly over there, as I sit. But 57 of the houses are active, and again, 30 of them are over $1 million. 34 sold in the past 30 days with an average days of 32 and 4. So Zionsville really sped up last week. So that's my stats, and so it's kind of interesting to see the difference between all the towns. It is town by town by town to see what the real market's happening.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and I wish we had more time. We could go through every area, but it would just take forever to do it. I think it's easier if people just call us if they have questions. Like, I can do this for any given area, and I mean, I work everywhere anyway, so it's not a big deal to me. Like, I'm pretty familiar with any area these days. But if you want to get a hold of us, my name's Kyle Morris with Morris Property Group, and FC Tucker. My number is 317-649-5122.
Now Shelly Walters with the Shelly Walters Realty Group, 317-201-2601.
And I'm Jay Rose with Indiana Business and Real Estate Academy. My number is 317-250-1724.
Do your continuing education.
Yeah. Call Jay or get online.